I'm Claire Hayes. I became involved with Chisenhale because I was involved with X6 Dance Space for several years before the start of Chisenhale. And in fact, if I remember right, it was because X6 was having to shut down. There was this need for a new dance space, and I was actually part of that team. I was involved with X6 from 1979. When I found out about it I had been to the Laban Centre for Movement and Dance, and a woman on my course had been at Dartington, and because of Dartington, she knew about contact improvisation and Steve Paxton, and through her, I went to something called Many Ways of Moving at what's now Middlesex University. There I met people from X6 because it was something that had been arranged to really bring together lots of people in alternative dance by the then dance professor. So I used to go to dance classes. I wanted to carry on. I went to one of the, not the first, but one of the earliest weekend workshops with Steve Paxton at X6. I think that was the first time I went there. And then I just started going to all the classes, to ballet with Mehdi Dupré, with Fergus Early, to improvisation. I was a real groupie. I was a fan. And it was cold. But it was, it was fun and it was exciting. And so I was very involved then I was involved with the New Dance magazine because I was also interested in writing. Anyway, so basically it was from my involvement with X6 that I became involved with Chisenhale. So I didn't help find it. There were people who found it, but I was definitely one of the team who went to clean it. This was before it opened as a dance space, who helped lay the floor, who basically changed it from being a warehouse or whatever to being a dance space. And yeah, so I was one of the team. But it was hard work. And I was around, but I was definitely around at the beginning and later on as a participant and even as a teacher, but not as part of the collective, because what it was taking out of me was, I still had to earn a living, etc., etc. So I remember meetings. I remember being dirty. It's literally the hard graft.
When did you stop being involved with Chisenhale so much?
I stopped being so formally engaged with it when basically the time it was taking up, I felt was taking away from my personal development and money earning. We have to keep bringing that up because it's real time. And that I felt that my career will be better served being a bit more. I think that was wrong, by the way, but that's the choice I made. But I know that I didn't stop being involved, I stopped being involved formally, but I definitely went to classes. Did performances, did some teaching, but when that was more up and running. I'm afraid I can't answer you very well, but somewhere between the initial setup and it being a kind of fully formed, certainly before it got any funding or, when it was a sort of fully formed, functioning place, I drifted away, but I was still in London. Yeah. I remember at one time I worked out that I was spending 4 hours a day traveling. I was living in North London. Chisenhale was in the east. I was spending all day on the tube, basically. So I think if Chisenhale had been in Islington, I would have been more involved for longer. So time consuming and expensive at that time, because it was only after that they introduced and again, it's real, a cheaper equivalent to the Oyster card. It wasn't that, but obviously, but more of a What I was doing in those years is probably what most of us involved were doing. It's like teaching. I was teaching part-time at Middlesex. I was teaching, it's funny, but I was teaching Cunningham technique. I was hopeless. I was always more of an improviser, but I can't even remember, but I was doing classes here and there, sort of Morley College, evening classes, that sort of thing, and at the same time pursuing really what my love was, which was performing and choreographing. So that's what, and I got an award. I did get an award, a choreographic award from GLAR, which was great. So I was just really freelance. I was doing, just a freelance, poor I don't like the word alternative, but on the fridge, postmodern. I mean, when I went to Laban Centre, I'd done an English degree at York, but I'd always wanted to dance. But this was early, really, before there was the place, but there was nowhere else to train in contemporary dance. And so I went to York, and then I went to the Laban Centre because that was something I could do. And then I think, so in a way, that unless there were very few companies, there was Rosemary Butcher, there was Dance Works with Christine Rapley and Tony Thatcher, but they were like a duo. Richard Alston, but he was above my league, although I used to go to his classes. And I hadn't had a long dance training, like a lot of the others had come through ballet school. And so I didn't have the technique. So then I really gravitated. It was natural for me to gravitate. When I found X6, it was like my spiritual home, because they were also involved in political, as you will know. This is why I loved working on the magazine. I mean, Fergus Early was definitely a mentor. He was so supportive, but also opened me up to the whole idea of dance being dancer-led. And working on the magazine was very important because, that was really fun because it was still in the days where we literally did cut and paste. And so I did, quite a lot for that. So I think what attracted me about, I think that was the question, was rooting more of that. Well, it was pioneering. And I think we recognized it as pioneering, but at the same time, because you didn't know what it wasn't very grounded, if that makes sense, certainly in terms of making a living or, and it just seemed natural to carry on the X6 participation in the New Dance magazine connection to Chisenhale. Chisenhale was a collection of friends creating something together. Chisenhale felt different because it was alternative, it was dancer-led, cooperative-led, and it was part of the whole movement in the 80s for the personal as political. I was very involved in feminism. My pieces were feminist pieces. So it really supported that political way of looking at dance as opposed to the aesthetic view of dance, which was the kind of norm, whatever the subject matter. The aesthetics was the baseline for the ballet, for most contemporary dance. I remember talking to Fergus about this quite a lot because I had a real dichotomy about whether to go like kind of social justice way or dance. And I was a dancer, I wanted to do dance, but I also wanted to go and be a volunteer in Latin America and various things. And also I was beginning to be involved in a more spiritual or, spiritual is the right word, like looking at that. And I couldn't reconcile them. Do I do politics and social justice? Do I do the spiritual path or do I do the dance path? And Fergus, I remember him saying something like, they can be the same. And just that sort of calm reassurance that literally I did have to choose what to do with my time because that was it. I wanted to, I always went to Rosemary Butcher's classes and she was like really encouraging, and I think have been in her company if I had focused. But again, that was a kind of, my own work was so political and so feminist, and I couldn't find I couldn't find the meeting place. Now it doesn't have I've got no problem with any of it. I'm older and wiser. But in my 20s, I was like, you have to make a choice. And Chisenhale seemed the more my I use the word political, but it was political, you know, it was a choice of being dancer led.
Yeah. Even now, it's much easier to have that overlap in art practice between the political and the social and things like that. But back then, and particularly in dance, that ground had not been trodden on. So,
light years apart.
Yeah,
it really hadn't. And so I was busy doing my little, I say little because they tend to be solo, feminist pieces. Like I did one on the Yorkshire Ripper. And I mean, that's what I got my award for, you know, from GLAR. But it was light years away, even from the people who, I mean, obviously Richard Olson became really, really mainstream, but he wasn't at that time, you know. And now, and even with contact improvisation, and I know we were pioneers now because you see, there's a different way of working with the body, with release technique, with contact and all of that. So I kind of knew, and I think we knew that we were on the beginning of something, but we didn't know where it was going to go.
Looking back at it now, you can see what was going on. But at the time, I suppose, you know, so experimental, so new, like you say, hard to see where that was going at the time.
And I think, I mean, I think there was a model in looking towards New York and America and Judson Church. And there was like this body of material that we could read about. And, you know, some of us went to the States and went to classes and all this stuff. But which was more, but I remember for myself thinking, oh my God, they were really important. And we're just doing our little thing of, you know, cleaning windows. Well, not completely, but you don't know it until hindsight. But I was thinking in the 80s, there was so much to do with improvisational music. You know, we used to do performances with musicians and artists, and it was all great, you know, but it was all everyone living on a purse string.
Yeah. I'm quite interested in the influence that second wave feminism had on you and your practice at that time. And you said you felt the experience of being at a junction, having to decide between dance and politics and social justice and all these things. How did you bring those together in your dance practice? What was it that you were kind of exploring through your dance practice?
I made a series of dances which were particularly about women. And I always use words as well. So there was always some text. I remember my piece about the Yorkshire Ripper, which I made before he was found, which involved, you know, the fear, the being chased, at one point I was naked with all white makeup on and some blood. But basically it was more like agitprop for dance, you know, because there was the agitprop theatre at the time. I made pieces about the women's body, about menstruation. So basically addressing social concerns. Hopefully it still looked beautiful and was interesting to watch as a dance. You know, I was talking about versus aesthetics. It didn't mean to say I didn't want them to be really good dancing, but they weren't primarily that kind of more pure aesthetics of a Cunningham or an Alston or a Rosemary Butcher, which were all beautiful and I loved. So I suppose that's how I tried to make sense of it. And I did choose dance. You know, I did choose to go more in that direction. But a lot of it was because of Fergus helping me see that I could bring that into I didn't have to say no to something. I also bring that into my work. And I suppose being part of a zeitgeist is you do pick up on the agitprop and the alternative and the ideas of the day.
And then I guess in terms of the way that Chisenhale was operating, feminist practices were adopted in the sort of collective structure, but then also I've noticed that there were women-only classes, and there was also a creche during those early years. I don't know when that stopped, but that seems as though that probably would have been really influenced by feminist collectives doing similar things at the time.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, how ahead of the time? I mean, creches are done. It's like unbelievable.
Yeah.
And I think, I mean, definitely Jackie Lansley was very feminist, from the X6 lot, you know, and I think that she definitely, yeah, made sure that that was in the field.
Yeah. And if you had to describe what Chisenhale was at that time, how would you describe it?
A family. That's my first words. Just came to mind. A family dedicated to dance, of the personal, the expressive, but also the socially aware. But first and foremost, a family. Yeah. Everything I learned, I'm now a therapist, because old dancers, well, first I did shiatsu, and then, but it's like everything I learned of how I'm working now with people, I learned through X6 and Chisenhale. How to be with another person with integrity, without judgment, with curiosity. I say X6 and Chisenhale, particularly contact improvisation, which I learned through there, with respect. So basically what I learned, and hopefully what I contributed, is I'm still using it. I mean, this afternoon I got clients. It's like doing contact with them, but I'm doing it on Zoom. I'm working on how they feel. Yeah. It's amazing.
Yeah. Lovely. Well, thank you very much. And
you're so welcome.
Yeah, nice to meet you.